And how much is there, how effective is public embarrassment? I mean, there was a conscious decision made not to refer the South Koreans to the Security Council, mainly because the South Koreans came here to Washington, because the Bush administration was pushing it for a while, because they said, you know, we have to be fair here, and we don't want a double standard. But then the South Koreans came, and they had their meetings, and they said, first of all, don't embarrass us. And, you know, it was a mistake, some rogue scientists, you know, we've got it all under control. Second item. By the way, did we mention to you how much problem we are having keeping those troops in Iraq? It was a very effective leveraging. Does it matter for all the other countries that are looking right now that a country like South Korea doesn't get referred, that there isn't a more vigilant public embarrassment, or it was a small program, it was a tiny amount of uranium, and there's bigger problems out there?
You know, I think with all the countries that have gone nuclear, and with the many countries that are virtual nuclear powers today, and I would say, based on many estimates I've seen, 30 to 40 nations could be nuclear powers within a year or two. Clearly, any country that, well, there are probably two basic reasons, as Jonathan said. Security concerns, that's the most important, and issues of prestige and even domestic political advantage. But everybody who could take a look at this since the beginning, since 1939, has taken a look at it. In a sense, it would be insane not to, from a point of view of the people responsible for the security of their country. The question always is there more benefit to the nation to be a nuclear power or not to be a nuclear power? And the whole story, I think, of this conference and of the NPT and everything else is trying to move those assets over to the side that says to every country in the world, it's benefit not to be a nuclear power. But everybody's going to figure out how to do this. And surely the Koreans were dealing with that as well.
Okay, I think we have 5 more minutes, Joe. Okay, you want to say something, and then I'm going to ask you all a question.
Yeah, Stan is certainly right that a moment does come in almost all countries that have them where a decision is made. On the other hand, there is a fantastic momentum in these programs. I've been looking recently into probably the most neglected country when it comes to acquiring nuclear weapons. That's Britain. Of course, they were deeply involved in the invention of the bomb from the very beginning when the Maud report came to the United States. And then it turned out that the United States didn't want them to get into this business and reneged on its agreement to cooperate and so forth when the McMahon Act was passed, barring the sharing of atomic information. Well, but the British, of course, were just kind of quietly going on, like a kind of moss growing in the basement. After the Second World, no decision was taken, no discussion occurred. In 4 years between the end of the World War II and for 4 years after that, there was just one mention of the British nuclear program in Parliament. And it wasn't until January of 1947 that Clement Attlee, Prime Minister Clement Attlee, actually sat down with 1 or 2 people and said, okay, we're going ahead with this. But the fact was that had very little operational effect on what was already happening, which was just kind of creeping along. And I think if you look at the Indian case, too, that almost half a century of the thing stopping and starting, there was a tremendous momentum. And the aspect of momentum, I think, is very important because it almost becomes a question for the politicians of, can we stop this? You know, can we turn it down? Can we turn it off? And that's the tough thing, I think.
Well, you're really describing the Iranian situation today, because that program's been ongoing for a very long time. And it leaves, of course, the problem with it is that it's ambiguous. But of course, it would always be ambiguous, because the technology is fundamentally the same technology to make the nuclear materials. And that is what I mean by virtual nuclear powers.
I'm going to ask you 3 of you to predict rather than being historians. Let's look forward here for a while. And if you're wrong, we won't remind you. Well, maybe we'll remind you. 10 years from now, how many nuclear weapon states are going to be out there? Which countries should we be looking at? What's the dynamic as you see going forward? What's your best guess, Stan?
Wow. Well, I think we're doing fairly well. I think using the past, not as many countries became nuclear powers as was once suspected, and there aren't too many candidates at the moment who look promising, and some have decided, like Libya, and some others have decided not to go for it. So I'd say we're probably about where we are. We'll be about where we are today, with about the same number, fewer nuclear weapons as a result of obsolescence and hopefully some more agreements. And it's not as scary a proposition as we could have envisioned a while ago.
So you're not worried about falling nuclear dominoes in Asia or
No.
Middle East? Okay.
10 years is too soon. I can't do that. There are too many variables right now. If North Korea became a much more active nuclear power, would Japan become a nuclear power? All those issues. But I can do the 100th anniversary of the Trinity test, 2045, when the one, I think, central issue about eliminating all nuclear weapons and having a world of virtual nuclear powers, which is how do you find the stuff and make sure you have it all under security and control, will be resolved by the continual technological erosion of privacy in the world, which within 20 years will be such that the only privacy left will be the privacy we legislate for ourselves. If you look, for example, at the new Korean ubiquitous city plans, where everything is going to be chipped and wired and wireless and so forth, I think the odds on reaching the point where nuclear weapons really can be monitored, and where an international last resort collection, small collection of dismantled weapons under international control would protect against breakout. You can begin to imagine a world without any nuclear weapons at all, where deterrence and all the classic theories of how these weapons might protect us would work even better than they work today.
Although, would you want to live in that world is a very interesting...
Well, it's not a choice. It's not going to be a choice.
Okay.
Well, I think prediction is a fool's game, frankly. Having said that,
Of course, it was my game, but...
Excuse me.
That's all right, I can handle it.
I agree with Richard's positive vision is mine also, in its details as well as in its broad outlook. I think that obviously the places where you would be worrying about proliferation would be the Middle East, Iran, clearly, and who knows, Iraq. The political future of that country is not clear by any stretch. They still have nuclear scientists, put it mildly. They may wind up an ally of Iran. Who knows what will go on there?
And they probably still have the aluminum tubes, so.
Yeah. And if they may have acquired some. They don't have them. We've learned that now. They don't have them, but they may have acquired them, the proper ones, the right ones. But to me, another question having to do with prediction is I do buy into Richard's vision, but the question is, will that come with or without the third use of nuclear weapons in history? In other words, will countries have the sense to go along that path without seeing another city or many cities or maybe a country down in South Asia or two countries wiped off the face of the map? Will we do it before or after that event? That, to me, is perhaps the key question.
Absolutely.
Well, with that cheery note, let us hope that it's without.
Before.
We're hoping
Before.
that in this race of time, that sanity will win. Thank you all so much.